I used to work part-time at a KFC. I was a broke college student and needed a way to make some pocket money. The pay was all right for the hours I worked, but I worked the closing shift, so I was able to take home any leftovers in the shop and save some money on food too, for all the fuss KFC puts up about their secret 11 herbs and spices. Actually making the chicken takes shockingly little skill. You just batter a bunch of chicken parts in flour and spice mix and dunk it in an oil fryer for a while. If it's undercooked, when you take it out, put it back in for a few minutes. If it's overcooked, serve it anyway. It's not like anyone will complain about the quality of the food if they're already willing to eat it at KFC. I never questioned what was inside the spice mix that went into the chicken I served people every day. I didn't even like the way it tasted all that much. It was good for about the first week of me working there, but after having KFC for dinner every night for the sake of saving money, I started to get sick of it. Still, I kept eating it because, hey, free food is still free food. One day, I went to work, as usual, fried a bunch of chicken for a bunch of people who were either regulars or just passing through, and split whatever was left with the other employees to take home. By the time I got home, the grease from the chicken had pulled onto the bottom of the cardboard box I used to carry it, and the once crispy batter had grown soggy during the long car ride. I entered my apartment and sat in front of the TV to eat the KFC chicken I brought back home with me, but I noticed something strange when I took the first bite. Now, I've eaten KFC fried chicken more times than I care to remember since I started working for them. I knew the taste of KFC like the back of my hand, whether I liked it or not, and this was not what normal KFC chicken tasted like. There was an odd, almost floury sweetness to it that I didn't recognize, and a slightly bitter aftertaste that left my tongue feeling a bit numb. It wasn't bad by any means, just strange. I'm sure that someone who hasn't eaten it almost every day like I had probably wouldn't have noticed the change in flavor. I assumed the flour or spice mix for the last batch must have been a few days past its expiration date. In DC, decided it'd be best if I didn't finish the chicken. I tossed the rest of the chicken out of my apartment window into the alley below for a lucky stray dog to come and eat it the next night at work. One of my co-workers, let's call him Jerry, chatted with me about the strange-tasting chicken as we were working the fryers to make more of the stuff. Hey, Sally, is it just me, or did the chicken last night taste a little off to you? I know what you mean. I couldn't bring myself to finish it. Was the spice expired or something? No, I checked the expiration date on the new spices that came in last night. They probably changed the formula without telling anyone to save on costs. I see. It probably doesn't taste all too different to people who don't eat it every day like we do. Yeah. To be honest, I think all of us have been eating way too much fried chicken since we started working here. I think you're right. There's more grease than blood in my veins at this point. How about we grab some actual food after work? Then I hear there's a noodle shop nearby that stays open really late. Jerry must have been the smoothest guy on the face of the planet, because I didn't realize he was asking me out on a date until halfway into the date. And I didn't even mind when I realized I was on one. I had a good time eating some actual food with a cute guy I liked and got home a little later than usual. Oddly enough, when I got back, the chicken pieces I'd thrown out the previous night were still there. Normally, the stray dogs in my area would fight each other for even the smallest scraps of expired food. 3 whole pieces of fried chicken to survive being devoured by them was a miracle, even if it was KFC chicken. Whatever was in that fried chicken, it must have smelled unpleasant enough to the dogs' sensitive noses that even they didn't want to eat it. In contrast, the sales back at the KFC skyrocketed over the next few days, so much so that there wouldn't be any chicken left at the end of the day for any of the employees to take home, even if they wanted to. The people who ate at the KFC changed too. They were the same regulars who came by from time to time since I started working there. But after the chicken began tasting strange, they came by almost every day and started ordering buckets worth of chicken instead of the modestly sized value menu items they usually ordered. Their appearances changed too. Their faces had become pale and filthy with bloodshot eyes that twitched and darted all over the place as they waited for their food. Red dots dotted their bodies like sore insect bites, which they scratched until their overgrown nails became bloody. It only got worse as time went on. Despite eating copious amounts of chicken almost every day, the regulars became skeletally thin with sunken faces that made them look more like walking corpses than people. On one particularly busy night, we ran out of chicken while the restaurant was full of the sickly-looking regulars. One of the reg-ers came up to the cashier I was tending to at the time. "One chicken bucket meal, please." "I'm sorry, sir, but we're out of chicken for the night." At that, the man's bloodshot eyes widened in surprise, and his lips curled into an angry snarl. "You're out of chicken? I need chicken. Will be restocked tomorrow. Sir, please, you can't do this to us. You can't be out. I need it. I need it now." The man's shouting started gaining the attention of the other regulars, but instead of being annoyed, they seemed to be just as concerned as he was about the lack of chicken. The ones who were still eating held their buckets of chicken close, while those who were nearly finished with theirs eyed them with hungry eyes. The next few minutes went by in a flash. The regular who'd been talking to me saw a woman with a nearly full bucket of chicken and lunged at it to grab a drumstick. The moment his hand got near the bucket, the woman grabbed him by the wrist and chomped down on his fingers with unnatural force that severed them clean at the joint. There was a scream from the man, followed by several more from the other customers, as they scratched and bit at one another like wild dogs to steal each other's chickens. I retreated back into the kitchen with the other employees, and we called the police. Our manager told us that he would go outside to wait for the police and left the restaurant through the back door. When the police finally came, the entire place was filled with crazed customers fighting each other over the fried chicken, which they eagerly ate from the floor. The police had to tase the ones still standing to arrest them, though many of them had to be taken away in an ambulance instead. When I asked the police where the manager who went outside to wait for them was, they looked at me in confusion. They didn't see anyone outside when they got there. The KFC was closed for the next few days for police investigation. Jerry and I both told the police about how the customers started acting strange ever since the chicken recipe changed. When they analyzed the spice mix we'd been using for the chicken, it tested positive for a highly addictive and very illegal drug, the same kind that was found in the system of every customer who was arrested the night all hell broke loose. Police theorized that the manager must have been putting addictive drugs in the chicken in an attempt to boost sales. It worked, but at the cost of the customer's physical and mental health. When he realized that he was going to get caught, he ran away and never looked back like the greedy coward he was. I live with the guilt of accidentally ruining the lives of all those people. Every day, Jerry assures me that none of us could have known, but he knows that's a lie as well as I do. Had we cared more about our job, we could have saved a lot of people from the life of addiction they are now trapped in. Music. I was driving to my parents' house across the state. I hadn't seen them in over a year, so I wanted to get there as quickly as possible. I wasn't planning to stop for anything except gas, but by about 2 in afternoon, I was starving. I needed to stop and get a quick bite. I pulled into a KFC in the middle of nowhere and parked. I probably should have gone through the drive-through, but I'd promised my girlfriend that I wouldn't eat in her car, so I had to go inside. The place was weirdly empty except for an older woman at the front counter. She smiled at me, looking like she hadn't seen a customer in hours. She seemed like a sweet, harmless old lady, very Midwestern. I said hello and ordered a Pepsi and some chicken nuggets back in a sick, she said after she took my money. I guess she was the only one working because she appeared into the back. I sat for a couple of minutes in one of the booths looking out at the rolling cornfields on the other side of the highway. Storm clouds had just rolled in, and I hoped that I wouldn't have to drive through the rain. Then someone pulled off the highway and parked in front of the restaurant. At first, I thought it was just a black car, but I quickly realized that it wasn't a car at all. It was a limo. I couldn't believe that an actual limo was driving on the highway, let alone that had decided to park outside a roadside KFC. I watched as a woman in a beautiful wedding dress got out of the driver's seat and walked right into the restaurant. I know I shouldn't have been staring, but it was such a strange image. She looked at me both because I was the only other person there, and because I was staring at her. I could see that she was beautiful, but her face was smeared with mascara. Obviously, she had been crying. She smiled at me and walked straight over. "Can I join you?" she asked. Sure, I said. So many questions were running through my head, but I didn't know what to say without accidentally insulting her. Clearly, she had been through a lot. Had she just been left at the altar? That seemed like the most likely explanation. "I'm Tom," I said. She shook my hand. "Mandy." We sat for a few seconds in awkward silence until she asked me, "Am I hideous?" No. I said she wasn't hideous at all. Despite the smeared makeup and her messy hair, she was genuinely beautiful. "You look great. Are you attracted to me?" she asked. I was sipping on my Pepsi at the time, and her question made me choke. I started because James said he was attracted to me. She continued, "But that was a lie." So she had been left at the altar. Poor thing. "I thought you're a very attractive woman," I said, "and it wasn't a lie." She definitely was, but I was in a committed relationship. I wasn't going to tell her that I was attracted to her, even though that was probably the answer she wanted to hear. "You're so sweet," she said. She reached across the table and grabbed my hand. She was wearing long white gloves, and for the first time I noticed that they were speckled with red stains. Was that blood? I tried to pull away, but she squeezed my hand hard. "Let's run away together, Tom," she said. "Just you and me." My heart started to race. I yanked my hand out of her grip and stood up. Thank you, but I really need to be going. I don't want to be driving in this storm." At that exact moment, the worker came out of nowhere and placed a tray of chicken nuggets in front of me. She looked at the bride. "Well, don't you look pretty?" the lady said. "Thank you, but my friend Tom and I were in the middle of a conversation." "Please leave." The old lady forced a smile, the kind that most Midwesterners have when they get offended, but don't want to say anything. Then she hurried back into the kitchen. I started inching towards the door. "You're leaving me too?" she screamed. "No," I said. "I just need to get to my car. I think I left my hand sanitizer." "Let me walk with you," she said. She started following me. I tried to act as casually as possible, even holding the door open for her, but I knew she was deranged. As soon as I got to my car, I'd lock the door and drive off, but she grabbed my shoulder and held me in place. Then she looped her arm around mine like we were walking down the aisle. I'm sure she could feel me trembling as we passed the limo. I noticed that its front fender was caved in and smeared with blood. This psycho had run someone over. I quickly turned away, but she knew that I had noticed. "That was our best man," she explained. "That's what's left of him anyway. I caught him kissing James behind the church." She stopped walking. She wanted me to say something. "I'm sure he deserved it," I mumbled. "He did. James is in the back. Would you like to see him?" She wouldn't let me go. She stared at me, eyes wide open. She didn't blink. I don't think she had blinked once since I met her. What could I say? She basically confessed to having a dead body in the back of her limo. This woman was a psychopath, and if I said the wrong thing, she'd attack me too. She was slender, not to mention weighed down by her ornate dress, but I knew she'd be able to overpower me. There was a real rage inside of her. "Let's not talk about James," I said. "You deserve better than him." That made her smile. "Wait here, and I'll get my hand sanitizer." I gently pushed her away and walked as casually as I could to my car. I unlocked the door and slid inside. I tried to close it behind me, but she grabbed the door and held it open. I shoved the key towards the ignition, but the woman punched me in the face. My keys went flying. "You're going to leave me too?" she said. "You're a liar, just like James." She dove through the door, her hair flinging wildly around her face. I'd never seen so much anger in my life. She grabbed me by the throat, but before I could do anything to fight back, I heard a loud bang. The bride froze. Her expression shifted from anger to shock. And before I could figure out what happened, I saw a puddle of red pool in her stomach soaking into the white wedding dress. As soon as she crumpled to the ground, I could see the old lady standing right behind her. She was holding a shotgun. Thanks, I said. The old lady smiled, that same Midwestern smile. Get back inside, hun. She said, we need to call the police, and you never got to eat your chicken music nuggets. I used to work at KFC a few years back. Later, I went back to my hometown, which is why I left the job. However, this is not the only reason I got fed up with the job. Common doubts like this often see customers of all kinds. One experience in particular terrorized me for life. I worked at the counter as a cashier, so I had to deal with customers directly. One night, I was sitting behind the counter and counting the cash at the end of the day when I heard the entrance door fly open. Two boys came inside. One had red hair and a pale complexion, while the other had a bun tied with dirty long hair dangling from his oily head. They were about 15 or 16 years old. Both of them had a very unclean presence. Their clothes seemed like they hadn't been washed in a long time. I could see dirt in their fingernails. A bad odor took over as soon as they approached the counter. A bucket of fried chicken, please, the redhead boy said in a cold voice while raising a $1.20 note at me. The boy with a bun wore a dirty sweatshirt, even on that hot summer night, as they stood there like two fishy customers that I would never want to meet at the end of my late night shift. I realized trouble was waiting for me. I told them to take a seat and went inside to tell Ralph about our last order. Ralph was the night cook who had joined recently. While giving him the order, I told him how sketchy those boys looked to me. Ralph laughed and said, I'm sure they won't be any petty thieves. Lucy, you go keep eye on them. I will be there with the fried chicken soon. I went back and saw those two boys wandering around the restaurant like they were walking in their homes. The red-haired boy was observing each detail of the shop. I even saw him noticing the security camera too attentively. From their behavior, I could tell they had some other intention. After wandering around for some time, they sat at a nearby table and started to talk in a low but deep voice. I couldn't hear their full conversation, but I heard them addressing each other by the names of Jackson and Liam. The red-haired boy was Jackson, and the other one was Liam. So far, I didn't hear Liam say a single word to me. He was the quieter one, and also the most mysterious among the two. He had lots of cut marks on his face, and every 5 seconds kept looking at me in a very creepy way. I even saw him licking his lips while he laid his eyes on me. Cold stare, and their inaudible whispers were making me even more anxious. Suddenly, Liam got up and went out of the restaurant. I wanted to ignore it, as this was none of my business, but I still asked, where did your friend go? Jackson smiled and said to take a leak. How long will it take? I smiled awkwardly and said, not much. Our cook will bring the food soon. You guys are our last customers for the night, hence it's taking time to arrange everything before closing the shop. After a few minutes, Liam came back and sat beside his friend, just like before. I waited and waited for Ralph to come out, but time went by. My level of patience gave in, and I got up and walked to the kitchen. The minute I stepped inside the kitchen, the electricity went out. It was a power cut, as I could see the street lights on the highway shining bright. Someone had purposefully turned off the power switch. I checked my pockets and took out my phone while trying to turn on the flashlight. I took a step further in the dark and stepped onto a gooey liquid that had a weird metallic stench. Damn it, Ralph, didn't you clean the kitchen? I screamed in the dark. I switched on my flashlight, and as it hit the floor, I saw what I had just stepped in. There was a pool of blood on the kitchen floor that came from a deep stab wound on the body of our night cook, Ralph. Oh, my God. I turned around to leave when I came face to face with Jackson. He stood there with a blood-soaked knife in his hand and smiled at me. I remembered there was a back door, so I turned around to escape from there. I was a few inches away from the back door when Liam entered the kitchen. So this is what he did when he went outside. My God. He entered the kitchen from the back door. and stabbed poor Ralph to death. These young boys are cold-blooded criminals. They cornered me from both ends, and I knew now it would be my turn to get slashed at their hands. What do you want? I said in a terrified voice. Look, Liam, she is willing to give us what we want, Jackson said while laughing like a psycho. Let and go to the counter, he said, and raised the sharper bloody knife at me. I tried to be calm because one wrong move could silence me forever. They escorted me back to the eating area, and when we reached near the counter, Liam pushed me from behind. I tripped accidentally and hit my head on the marble desk. Blood rushed down immediately, and I started crying in pain. Just tell me what you guys want, please. Just let me go. Yes, we don't want to murder a poor weak woman. It doesn't matter anyway. We just want the money from the cash register. That's all. You guys are doing this for some money. There's still time. You two are too young to destroy your life like this. Do you have any idea what the cops will do to you if they ever catch you suddenly? I saw Liam's face turn pale. For the first time, he looked scared and said in a fumbling voice, maybe we should just leave, Jackson. I don't want to go to prison. Jackson grabbed his shoulder and screamed furiously, don't chicken out now. This is just trying to mess with us. We won't get caught. He slapped me hard across my cheek, making my lips bleed, and said, just give us the money. We don't need your lecture. Lady Jackson gave the knife to Liam and snatched my phone from my hand. Now go to the cash register. Go, he screamed. The flashlight on my phone was the only source of light. Till now I knew these boys had turned off the power so that the security camera would fail to record them. But I didn't want them to go so easily. An idea came to my mind. I stopped and said, the cash register is automated. I need to access the computer to open it. I hope you're not trying to be smart with me, lady, because I'll cut your throat and then dump your face inside that hot fryer in the kitchen. He threatened. I made them understand that this was the case when it really wasn't. They whispered to each other for a few more seconds, and Liam went inside the kitchen to turn on the power. As soon as the power came on, Jackson said, turn off the security camera. I know you can do that from your computer. Do it now. I could have easily faked that and let their entire act get recorded by the camera, but I actually did turn it off because my plan was something more sinister. I opened the cash register and loaded the money inside a bag. As Jackson came close to take the bag from me, I grabbed his head and slammed it hard on the desk. The sudden strike hit him so hard that he didn't even get the chance to scream. Half of his face got smashed as flesh and blood poured out of his wounds. I took my phone from his hands, but didn't call 911 yet. Liam walked in from the kitchen and got shocked, realizing the tables had turned. He ran towards the exit at full speed, and I was ready for my next move. He was inches away from me as he had to walk past the counter to reach the entrance. That's when I threw chili flakes on his face. I had already taken them from the kitchen when these two dumb boys were hacking in me in the dark. He screamed in burning pain and fell on the floor. I ran at him and snatched the knife from his hand. I stabbed them both to death. I closed the store, cleaned all the mess, and wrapped their bodies in garbage bags. There's an incinerator in the basement to burn the waste. I called 911 and hid their bodies inside the incinerator. The cops came and took my account of a robbery done by two mad young boys. Security camera had the footage of them entering and wandering inside the restaurant. In the very beginning, the cops identified them as escaped thugs who had passed records of burglary and other crimes. The story flashed in the morning news as two boys murdered the night cook, tortured a lady employee of KFC, then took all the money and ran away. I went back the next day and burnt their bodies in my free time, only I had access to the basement, so my secret remained pretty safe. I continued working there for a month or two, and then left the job for a fresh start. The boys are still on the wanted list. I am still the poor victim in everyone's eyes, when in reality I got away with music murder. The dreariness after long hours of rainfall dragged on. It was all-encompassing, filling my gaze with a bleak aspect of the world, the pattering drops striking the glass pan outside of the restaurant, and the empty streets beyond KFC was empty, and in some way I felt I was too deep in my heart. I was lost in a maze of thoughts, things that had been long forgotten. I succumbed to painful pangs of yearning for memories long past. The groove of the beating rain on the pan of glass lulled me to drowsiness. I tried to remain alert to the doors as I sat behind the counter watching this desolate vision of rain come all around me. A door creaked behind me, and I turned my neck in futile relief, half expecting Josh to walk through. But there was no one there. He had been gone for 15 minutes at most, and I supposed he took his time with whatever he was doing back there. I picked my finger from my fist and rubbed around the counter table. I paused in my track of thought and wondered why he always took so long. Josh, I called out, echoing through the defeating quietness in the cafe. There was no response. Boys, I thought to myself as I settled into my seat. It was cold. It was not difficult to imagine he had surrendered to some sinful manations back there with no one around for us to serve. A discerning smirk crossed my face, and I rolled back into the quietness that was my mind. It was in this quietness in which I was sitting when I saw a black sedan cruising through the pool of water in the lot. I gasped in delight at the sight of a new customer, but a curious maneuver followed because the driver changed his mind from parking in the allotted space. He instead drove all the way up to the doorway of our KFC. I contained my apprehensiveness with a little understanding because of the rainfall. Still, I could not make sense of it. I stood from the seat behind the counter and ambled around to the main foyer. The driver pulled to a stop outside and turned off the engine. I sensed something was awry, but I was so given to duty that I did not dwell too much on the thought. Just as I approached the door, a redhead girl stepped out of the passenger seat. For one who was in a car, she was as drenched as though she had been in the rain. She wore no makeup, but her skin was so flawless that it seemed so upon sighting me. She looked down with her eyes fixed. I was struck by it. The driver's seat yawned open. Stupid. A burly black man introduced himself with those words as he stepped out of the driver's seat of the car. Alarms immediately went off in my head, and perhaps he perceived it too, because when his eyes turned to me, his expression changed. His features slackened, and suddenly he squinted. I cleared my throat with a loud call. Adam, you can't bring your vehicle to the door. Sir, I said to him, reining in the urge to not stare at the girl. What he blurted in exasperation. The words hung at the base of my throat. The rain drew over his face as it cast into a long, vicious smile. Everything else that mattered blurred in that moment as I saw this man, whose name I did not know, and whom I had just met barely a moment ago, draw out the longest blade I had ever seen. I'm sorry, I apologized without thinking. I'm going to kill you, he said casually and with no arrogance attached to it. It was the seriousness of his words and the decisiveness with which he said it that scared me to the core of my being. It was the same way a man who jogged many times down a trail would say to himself that he would jog. He slammed the door and my eyes fell to his blade, and the way he gripped it. He was a man who had done it many times, I could tell, and it made me sick with dread that such a promise was made to me. The rain soused through the shiny edge of the blade, and it was not difficult to imagine my blood on it. The bitter taste of panic filled my mouth and my knees rocked. But first, you're going to make us something to eat, he said, as composed as he'd made his first promise. He beckoned to the redhead, and she staggered towards him. He grabbed her hair, forcefully held it up, placed his blade between the tufts, and slashed. The blade made a clean shave through the band of her hair. He snickered and threw it on the floor. I trembled as I turned back into the restaurant and saw the deep emptiness before me. I wondered how my life had moved from the dullness that it was moments ago to me being on the edge of a knife. My heart was in a wild frenzy that worsened when I thought about such a strange death that had been promised to me. Josh had not yet returned, and for his sake I prayed that he did not have to trying to run away. How making me run in the rain, the man said, but I sensed that it was not to me, but to the girl he was with. I'm going to rip you apart, spread your gut on the streets for the cops to find. The bitter spittle of panic in my mouth Balled up to a clogging accuse matter, I retched with one hand in my mouth, stopping myself from throwing up. Be quick about it, he said, but I could not. I was so shaken by my fear of death that when I tried to grab the serving spatula, I dropped it. This made him furious. Can you women get any stupider? Neither of us had any answers for him. He kissed his teeth and began to make his way around the counter, sensing we were both overcome by our fear to resist him. When he was beside me, he nudged me violently with his elbow, and I fell towards the door. My fall made way through the door, and I saw Josh leaning against it with a Rubik's Cube in his hand. He saw me on the floor and lost restraint. He charged at this strange man in swift silence and struck him in the back of the head with the edge of the Rubik's Cube with all of the force he could muster. The man fell forward and struck his temple against the glass over the trays. Just then, the loud blaring of a police siren rent the air with the man still unconscious on the floor. Josh cussed at him. He quickly picked the blade off the floor and placed it on the counter. Are you okay? He asked me. I could scarcely breathe, but I nodded my head, only too glad to get another chance at life. Freeze. Two cops burst into the cafe with their guns drawn. The red-head girl scooted over to us as she burst in tears. Hey, he's over here. I knocked him out already, Josh said to the cops, and then turned to us. I knew he was no good, so I'd called the cops. Music. I've decided against giving my name, as it is in my best interest, and also because I am a full-blown accomplice to the horror you are about to hear. So my alias in this story will be known as No. This incident happened over 5 years ago, and I have held on to it throughout all these years. But no matter how much I try, I just can't sleep. Right? Maybe telling this will remove the huge weight that has been weighing down on my conscience all these years. I worked at KFC for over 12 years. I used to love the place, the smell of the chicken, the chatting customers, basically everything about that restaurant made me happy. If I remember correctly, it was on a Thursday, and I had gotten a call from the manager's office. When I went there, I was told that I would soon be promoted to manager. I remember the manager at the time telling me, remember, being manager comes with a lot of new responsibilities, and I hope you will be able to handle it the way I have all these years. I remember telling him with a smile, I am fully sure that I am capable, sir, and I know that I will be able to take on the position. He then replied to me in a low, dark tone, I really hope you are. During my last week as a normal employee, I was given the night shifts. There was a lovely chubby kid called Timmy who always used to come to the restaurant. He would stay there all day till late at night, and since he was a regular customer, I befriended him. I later found out that the reason why he was always at the restaurant was because he hated going home. I remember he told me my mom and dad are always fighting. They really don't care about me, so anytime they give me money to eat, I always come here so that I don't have to see them fight. I took a liking to the kid because I sympathized with him, so after my shift, I would always keep him company. Most times I would sit with him as he ate. One particular thing I remember about the young boy Timmy was that he would always vigorously lick his fingers after eating his food. I would always chuckle about it because it reminded me of the KFC slogan, it's finger-licking good. So anytime I served him, I always said, it's so good you'll lick your fingers. The next day during my second night shift, I saw a man coming in wearing a hoodie. I couldn't see his face, but he had a bad aura, and he made the environment tense. He walked up to the counter to order a bucket of chicken. I remember walking up to the table to serve the strange man his food, and he said to me in a low, deep voice, are these the finger-licking good ones? I was confused, but I said, yeah, man, I guess so. He then replied, yeah, sure, these are finger-licking good ones. I don't need any other ones, but those. I was creeped out now, but I said with a forced smile, yeah, they sure are. With no response, he looked forward into the void and silently began to eat. I went back to the counter a bit anxious and shaken up. After a while, the man finished his meal and he left, leaving only me and Timmy in the restaurant. I don't know why, but I heaved a sigh of relief as the environ wasn't tense anymore. The next night was basically the same thing as the man came in and ordered the same thing he did the night before. The night after followed in the same order as the man arrived at the same time. Nothing changed until the last night of that week. I was going to be the manager the next day, so it was my last day as a normal worker. I wasn't really doing anything, so I went out for a minute to throw out the trash. When I came back, I couldn't see anyone. Neither Timmy nor the man was there. I was sure no one left, as I didn't see anyone leave through the front door. I became scared, and that's when I began to hear sounds coming from the kitchen. I waited for a few minutes before I decided to go check it out. As I finally reached the kitchen, I saw the weird man manning the grill while whistling a tune. I remember asking, "What are you doing here? Where's the cook?" The hooded man then replied to me in his usual low voice, "His shift is over, so it's my turn." I remember being shocked for a minute as he said it with all confidence, as if he was sure of what he was saying. I then quickly said, "I'm sorry, man, but you don't work here, and customers aren't allowed back here, so you have to leave." The hooded man just ignored me and continued cooking. I was perplexed, as I didn't know what to do. I contemplated forcefully dragging him out of the kitchen, but seeing as he was a huge, unpredictable man, I decided not to. As I was deep in thought, I noticed him bring out a jar from his pocket and begin to slowly add what I assumed to be fries dipped in ketchup into the deep fryer. I couldn't make them out at first glance, but with a closer look, I realized that he was slowly dropping bloody human fingers into the fryer. It took me a moment to process what I was seeing as I slowly began to back away to call the police. That's when tripped on something. I quickly looked at what had tripped me, and lying across the floor was young Timmy's corpse. His hands had been mutilated as all his fingers had been cut off. I began to scream as the sight of the child I had befriended on the floor shook me to my core. Within seconds, my manager immediately rushed in. I didn't know he was still around, and I began to say, "Thank God you're here. Please get help. This man killed this child." And that's when my manager put his hands to his lips and told me to keep quiet. "You don't want to alert anyone now, do you know?" he said. He then calmly walked to the hooded man and said, "Mr. Cornelius, here is just our night chef." That's when the man removed his hoodie and I saw his face. He had scarring all over, looking like a messed up butcher. He was just doing the needful. My manager continued. I was speechless and confused at the same time, but I remember stuttering out, "Are you feeding our customers human fingers?" My manager replied, "Gods, no, you see, no. The way fine wine adds a divine taste to dishes is the same way seasoned human fingers add to the taste of chicken." I was still frozen in place and confused. He then continued, "It's simple. To get that finger lick in good taste, we need good seasoned human fingers, as it changes the taste in entirely. It's like that special spice. Believe me, you won't understand till you've tried a fresh one from the batch." The cook then offered me a wing to taste. I was still frozen, contemplating whether to scream and run. And that's when my manager said, "These are the new responsibilities that come with being a manager. I was once in your position, Mr. Noah, and I had to choose, and remember, you were the one who said you were ready for it. I don't know why, but there was this sick voice at the back of my head that told me to do it. Maybe it was my selfish human wants, as I really wanted to be the manager. I had subconsciously waited so long for the position, and if keeping one little messed up secret was the price to get what I wanted, so be it. So I did it." I remember taking the wing and eating it, and I realized that everything they said was true, as it had a beautiful, sweet taste to it, something I hadn't tasted before. I went on to be the manager of that branch for 5 years. In that time, I ignored all the missing people posters that were popping up, as I knew what had happened to each and every one of them. Even after all this time, I thought I had silenced my conscience, but I still see Timmy's face every night for the past 5 years. I'm not telling this story for forgiveness, neither am I telling it out of remorse. I'm doing it because I hope telling the story gives me the peace I so desperately need.